What a first round in the college football playoff. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, we got a little bit of a wacky game on Friday night. We got a defensive struggle on Saturday morning. Then we got a couple of blowouts. What's so great about it? Being at home. This is the College Game Day podcast. We are recording on Monday, December 22nd. Rece Davis, Pete Thamel, and Dan Wetzel here. The atmospheres in all of the places, but particularly the two where Pete and I were in person, were as exciting, electric, vibrant as anything I've ever experienced. Kyle Field was great, but I don't know that I've seen anything quite like the Oklahoma game production people and students put together for that scene Friday night in Norman. There were laser shows or flyovers. Of course, everybody knows 50 Cent came out, but that was during the game. I mean,
purple sunset, Rece? There was a purple sunset.
The sunset. I would say it was crimson. Maybe
Fair.
It was really purple, but let's go ahead and say crimson because of Crimson and Cream and the Crimson Tide. Everything, the setting was perfect. And I understand we are preaching to the choir here, guys. But whether it's 12, whether it's 16, it even occurred to me, we don't need to go to 16 to have another round of home games. That was the highlight of the weekend. I thought the games were fun too, for the most part. But even I would get into this. I thought Miami and Texas A&M was great. There were sloppy moments of kicking miscues and stuff like that I think gave the perception that, this is not fun. That was fun, man. It was hard hitting. It was physical. Two really good defenses going at it. Offenses then pulled the horns in a little bit as we went along and made it or kept it low scoring, I think. But the whole thing was what college football is supposed to be, Pete, and what I hope it looks more like in the future when we tweak this format and the venues and all of that.
Boy, we live in divided times, Rece, in college football, right? The leagues can't get along. Nobody can agree on anything. Everyone's squabbling. Nobody can agree on the rules. There's constant realignment. I think if there's one thing that is virtually universally accepted, it's that home playoff games are awesome and we need more of them. Like, I don't know, unless you are wearing a canary yellow bowl blazer, I don't know how you could have gone to those games and been like, you know what? We're really going to enjoy an antiseptic stadium with like a neutral vibe, thousands of miles. No way, man. It was just elite. The crowd in Norman, Rece, at our show was awesome. Walking in that stadium, I mean, the electricity just rose 100 miles an hour. You could tell like Oklahoma fueled off it too. And then Alabama got fueled by 50 Cent, right? Like that was the bunch of those players were talking about how that fired them up, and they rallied.
They play the song. I didn't know this. Found this out after the game. I guess they feel like this is their Friday song. Nobody knew this. I guess they play this on Friday in practice or something, and they kind of got amped from it. So.
Yeah, and they probably didn't know it was coming, so that kind of had to be pretty cool. The Oklahoma people, and it was Joe Castiglione, the athletic director's last home football game there as the AD. The fedora rode once again, and they pulled out all the stops to make it electric and memorable, and they certainly did that. And then walking into Kyle Field on Saturday morning, that place is always juiced. It's always electric. There's raw, visceral passion there. I had never felt it like that. Peak Manziel years, any other, big non-con games I've been there, I had never felt it quite as juiced up as it was, as it was for that. And I agree. I thought that was a fun football game. It's just different. You know what I mean? Every game doesn't have to be, 35-31. And I thought there was some good strategy stuff, some fun play calling to try to, sneak yards. It was a cool kind of sumo chess match.
Rece, I love that you mentioned that beautiful sunset, and I think everyone who has listened and read my stuff through the years knew once you mentioned sunset, I'd get triggered. Because one of the impediments to a playoff and even to sorting out New Year's Day, the schedule, was the Rose Bowl committee's insistence on having the sunset over the San Gabriel Mountains in Pasadena, California, at the start of the fourth quarter. And I would tell people one of the biggest problems with things that are holding up a playoff from ever forming back before we had it, back when I was writing Death to the BCS, was a sunset.
Subtly titled?
Subtly titled. You could not tell what position I had. I wrote Death to the BCS.
And very well done.
Fair and balanced. Very fair and balanced book. Very fair and balanced. No. And they wouldn't believe me. I said, no, they will not move this game. They believe they have the right to. The sun has to set at the end of the third quarter, the start of the fourth quarter. And I will say, it is one of the most glorious sunsets you will ever see. It is an incredible. If
awesome.
We were going to do it for a sunset, then during COVID, they moved it to AT&T Stadium. You remember that? And the sun set over the Walmart in Arlington. that also, that Walmart that's right by the stadium, Jerry World.
Yeah.
That also was glorious in its own way. No, the sunset, and I believe this is the first time they're moving the game an hour earlier, because the sun will still set. It will just set at the end of the game instead of the start of the fourth quarter. That was it. And that's why the Sugar Bowl would start at like 9:00 Eastern, and half the people couldn't watch the second half. And I always said, the sun sets in many places in this country. In fact, every place in this country, that's how the sun works. And we would get other glorious sunsets. And so indeed, right? I believe in Oklahoma, they wrote a book, The Outsiders, and that was the big part. The sunset looks just as good on the poor side of Tulsa as the rich side, right? I think he was trying to like get Diane Lane to, that was his big move. And so that was it. And so we finally get these sunsets. We should be doing the quarterfinals. We should be doing the semifinals. And if you want to play the Rose Bowl final game, perfect. Nobody's ever stood in the middle of Norman or Oxford or Bryant-Denny or the Horseshoe or whatever and said, boy, I so wish we were at University of Phoenix Stadium in Glendale, Arizona, whatever they're calling it now. I wish we had more parking lots surrounding this place. It needs to be on campus. The games are more, it's festive. You get a reward, although both teams lost this time, but you get an advantage for finishing higher, which incentivizes the regular season. It is better for the fans who no longer have to travel. It's better for just everybody. The local economies, I saw things, maybe $75 million got pumped into Oxford, Mississippi economy. Well, in a town that size, that's a lot of money. It's not so much in Phoenix or Miami or whatever. I mean, it still matters. But in those towns, we go to them, it's not just the hotels. It's the little mom and pop shops. It's the coffee stand. It's all these different things. It's the guy that has the house near the stadium that gets an extra day of putting $100 trucks in his thing. This is undeniably better. And the only thing holding us back is this idea we have to help the bowl industry. We have to stop outsourcing your most valuable product, which is playoff games. Put them on campus. We should be playing the quarterfinals, maybe even the semifinals on campus like the NFL. I covered a lot of NFL in my career. Those playoff games are incredible. Oh, it's going to be too cold. Are you kidding? That's just how you got to deal with it. You got to go to Green Bay. You got to go to Chicago. It is so much better of a game on campus. We have these incredible towns, these incredible facilities, and we have incredible, maybe not quite San Gabriel, but pretty darn good sunsets.
You know what? I was thinking as we were watching. One quick thing as we were watching, Dan. I said this to I think to Billy Lucci, the Texas A&M, Texas Ags guy who does a tremendous job and knows everything about them. I said, you imagine how great this would be if the winner of this game are going to Columbus. I know the weather's way better where we are, but I've been saying for a while that the next round needs to be on campus. I'm starting to come to your point. Like the NFL recently was saying, maybe we should move our conference championship games to neutral sites. I'm like, are you crazy? We're trying to go to what you're doing, which I generally prefer everything about the atmospheres in college football over the NFL, just generally speaking. We have the atmospheres better than they do. We have it right, more right than they do. That's one thing that they have right. I don't know why they would come the other way. We need to be moving toward what they're doing. And the idea that you can't win on the road, The first year it looked like that. This year, 2 of the road teams won. Maybe some year all 4 road teams will win. And there will probably be another year where all the home teams win by 3 touchdowns. That's ball. Things happen, and you need to do what's best for the enterprise and for the sport. Not do that. I've got some ideas on how to save the bowls too. I think they're worth saving. They may not like it. They might not make as much money. I don't want to take us too far off track, Pete. I want you to make your point. People have said the things about, well, let's play the bowls at the beginning of the season. Let's make them not count on your record. That's a bad idea. If you play, it's got to count on your record and nobody's going to care. And I'm not even big on playing them right off the bat because we've seen the difference in all of those neutral site games early in the season as opposed to Texas at Ohio State. Home games better. Okay, so I'm a traditionalist. I like the bowls. They're fun. Historically, they've been a very important piece of the puzzle historically in college football. So what do? Here's what you do. And I think I've said this on the podcast before. It becomes like the Players Era Festival in college basketball right now. You go play for money. You go to a non-playoff bowl game or any bowl game, and there's a cash prize for the players. And winners get more and losers get less. Play for money. You're already playing for money. So let's play for some big prize. And that's, get a corporate sponsorship. You hype it up and you play for money. That's what I think you could do with the bowls because let's not be disingenuous here. We're all in the television industry. We need inventory. We want the bowl games to be played for inventory. And for the people who are about to be aggregators, who are about to clip that off and say, listen to him, he just cares about the money. Guess what? You want to watch. You want to watch, sweetheart. We all do. We want to watch football. Here's another little sneaky little secret. Football players like to play football. So why don't we let football players play football? Let TV people who want to broadcast football. And then we've got to do something to make this more viable. So the bowl guys, you're going to have to find a way to offer cash and prizes to the players to play. So that's what you do. Big, fat prize right there. Now, I understand if Jack State plays Troy, the prize is not going to be as big as when Michigan plays Texas, but it's a prize nonetheless. And you get to play for money. And that would be my suggestion. I'm sorry I took us in a different direction, Pete. I'm sure you had a very salient point you needed to make.
It's not a salient point. It's a quiz.
Oh, what's the quiz?
Dan's Oxford economic stimulus package. So
I
Mark
graduated.
Schleba sent me a screenshot of the cost of the Courtyard by Marriott Oxford from December 19th to 21st. Now, the three of us have
2-night or 3-night minimum? 2-night or 3-night minimum?
2-night
minimum. Okay.
2-night minimum.
Okay.
19th to 21st. So the 2 nights that you would go for the playoff. The three of us have spent a lot of nights in Marriotts in our life, right?
Yep.
A lot. I would probably say 10,000 between the three of us. A lot of nights. Can you guess how much one night, just one night, not both, one night at the Courtyard by Marriott Oxford was? And this is a screenshot from the website.
It's like Price is Right.
I knew you would like this game, Dan.
And then I can hit $1.
Yeah, this is great.
I can do the $1 play. Can I do that?
Yeah.
The legendary. I want to know who the first guy was that who realized to bet $1. That guy was an innovator back in like the 50s, whenever that show started.
Yeah,
go ahead, Rece.
If Dan goes too low, I'm going to go $1 above.
One more. Yeah, right. Then the guy bids 2. It's like, oh, you dirty. That's a cheat. I'm going to say $7.99.
There aren't a lot of hotels in Oxford, as you guys know. So I'm going to say, I've stayed in that Courtyard too. It ain't great. If it's, I'm still going to say 1,800.
What if I said Rece is off by half?
I almost guessed 2,100. So you're going to say it's 2,700 a night?
$3,737.
What?
I have the screen.
Whoa.
Okay, that's
That's why I brought it up. And the point was probably microwaved because Dan made it 3 minutes ago. But I just in a lifetime of looking at the Marriott website and searching for it, I have never seen
a courtyard,
like a courtyard that would go for what, $129 a night.
Well, that's just straight. That's really not cool.
That's
no, I know. No, I'm aghast by it.
The person paying that has a private jet and they didn't have to stay.
They didn't have to stay. They left it.
Supply and demand.
If you see that the courtyard, instead what you do is you stay in the Courtyard by Marriott in Tupelo, and then you get to go to the Blue Delta place and maybe buy some jeans with the extra money that you have.
Memphis.
And you can go by Elvis Presley's birthplace. And you can, I don't know if the old cinema where I used to go to the movies when I was a kid in Tupelo is still there. But if it is, you can catch a movie all for the money you save. Or you can go to Memphis. But you're not paying, you are not a wise steward of your financial resources if you paid $3,700 to stay in that courtyard.
No. Save your money, buy a linebacker. I mean, come on.
I wouldn't pay $3,700 to stay there for a month, Pete, if I had to live there. Wow. But that's a good example. How do those things work on hotels? Is that like I don't know. Is that like the airline? On airline
they
tickets,
got an algorithm.
like if you search too much, the price goes up when you're searching for an airline ticket. So that might be you might have been able to get in the door there at the courtyard for less than that, I think. Yeah. But not if you just booked it off that website there. You could.
I showed the screenshot because I was dumbfounded, and that might have been just that night. Well, I have no idea. But there's price gouging, and then there's that.
If anybody's listening that paid an exorbitant fee to stay in Oxford, or Oxford probably is the best example, or Eugene or College Station for that matter, or Norman. If you did, put it in those comments below our podcast thing. We put it in there. I'd love to know what people paid for that.
Still a better deal for fans, most fans, than having to go to a bowl game. Because look at these next three games, and a lot of these teams that just won, they had to do a neutral site conference championship game. Like if you're an Ohio State fan and you're going to play, so they're playing Miami in Arlington, right?
Right.
You're thinking we might have three more games. So unless you are of considerable means, or that's the only one you're going to go to, like, do you sit back and say, I'm going to hold off for something? Like you're setting up a system that only rewards the uber rich fan, even to go to one game, let alone the next three playoff games. And it's just a bad setup. I get the tradition and stuff, but traditions end. And things are this is just a better deal for everyone. It always has been. The bowl industry made an enormous amount of money. Bowl directors making $1 million a year years ago, running one game and then throwing lavish parties on all the decision makers and the ADs and golf trips and all these things. It's just, this is a better. I cannot imagine, other than the Miami Hurricanes right now, saying I'd much rather be in Arlington than having, and imagine the advantage Ohio State might get. Let's remember, really proven true, but that Miami's got to go north and play. Maybe it snows. Maybe it doesn't. Yeah. Maybe it's 50. You really don't know what it's going to be. I mean, it's supposed to be 50 up here in Michigan this week. So, you don't know that it's going to be freezing and bitter, but if so, that's Ohio State's advantage. Deal with it. That's if they're going to keep expanding this playoff, and they probably are, you have to set up things on what is the incentive to have a great season? Because if you put 1 through 16 into all neutral sites, you cut there's no advantage to being one. There's some advantage, but not a lot. Yeah. But it all of a sudden, like if Indiana, if the national semifinals are on home field, that Big Ten title game that we just had, that Indiana won to be 1 and Ohio State dropped to 2, all of a sudden, well, I guess that wouldn't matter. Well, let's say they dropped to, you get the point. They dropped to 4. It matters. Year. You get home field. Yeah, there you go. That didn't work quite, but you know what I'm saying? Now it matters because like that, who's 2 and 3? Georgia or Ohio State? Well, that's a big difference. That game's going to be in Athens, or that game's going to be in Columbus. So you have to create incentive tiers to why it keeps mattering to win. And so that's why in the NCAA basketball tournament, after the first round, it really doesn't matter. Like a little, it matters a little, but pretty soon you're everyone's even. That's basketball. They got to play a ton of games. It's a totally different thing. But in football, you'll see teams in the NFL. It matters. They've figured out how to make all 17 weeks matter pretty much, because you're like, oh, if I'm the 1 seed, I get a bye. If I'm 2, I could drop all the way to 6 and I got to play 3 road games. They've done all that stuff. College football needs to do that with the home field.
The one point, Dan, before we turn to games, I want to expound upon it you made, and I mentioned it briefly on Game Day Saturday when we were talking about this topic, though not quite as in much depth, was that we needed more home games and we needed it for the fans, for the cost. You made a point about the uber rich. Well, unless they're retired and uber rich and predisposed to spending their time that way, you've got 2 problems. One, most people can't afford, as you rightly pointed out, to do 2, 3 trips or whatever, especially when you don't know for sure if you're doing that trip until after the game. And then the other part of it is the opportunity cost, because a number of the people who might be in a financial position to make all those trips can't afford the time. Because they have businesses, they have important jobs, or maybe their kids have things, or whatever it might be. There are other constraints. They have a rhythm for making it from Yazoo City to Oxford, for making it from Toledo to Columbus for a game. They have a rhythm. We get up on Saturday morning, we go, this is our tailgate spot. We know we're going. We don't need a hotel. We're going to pack the cooler, or we've got our restaurant spots, and then we're going to be back that night, or we're going halfway. We spend the night on Saturday night. We get home Sunday morning, hopefully in time for church, and then they go on and they go about their week the next week. If you're going to Phoenix, it doesn't work that way. So that it's part of it is the opportunity cost, even for those who are financially able to do so. I mean, I think, look, this is a no-brainer. They don't have to expand to 16 to do it. They need to put minimum 2 rounds on campus. And the more we talk about this, I'm for it all the way to the championship game, all the way. Home games until then. Your point about doing it there also incentivizes 2 versus 3. There are a number of reasons to do it. You can do it. You can keep it at 12. And there would be those, Pete, who said that if you looked at the games this weekend, that 12 is plenty, that you don't have to expand. What was the most surprising result on the field to you? I mean, I guess it has to be the last 3 quarters of the Alabama-Oklahoma game is what I would guess, right?
Considering that Oklahoma very nearly put that game in a vice grip, right? Mm-hmm. They had the tight end drop the touchdown pass, or sure touchdown pass, and then the punter who forgot to punt, right? Like, I mean, talk about a wild swing that even allowed Alabama to get back in the game. And then, to their credit, once they did, more Oklahoma punitive mistakes came, and Alabama gathered some momentum. And a lot of credit to Kalen DeBoer. That guy he is a great big game coach. He's great against top 10 teams. He is great in big moments. He coached fearless, and they didn't flinch. Down with the guillotine teasing their throat, they didn't flinch. And a lot of credit for them to then putting the hammer down, coming back, and scoring that much over those last 3 quarters against one of the 5 best defenses in the country. I mean, that Oklahoma defense with our Mason Thomas back had been elite. They obviously, had a pick 6, but kind of figured out a way to move the ball and get enough yards and wrestle back control of that game amid a complete just raucous environment.
I made a big deal, Dan. I don't know how much of the metrics you like to follow. I have always enjoyed, and I don't know if Connolly has this Bill Connolly has this as a proprietary thing, or if it's something he uses within his SP Plus, but the post-game win expectancy thing, in which you take the success rate on each play of the game, you take all the numbers, and you say, with these stats, with these success rates, with these moments, what is the likelihood that you would win the game? And so Friday before the game, one of the leads on Game Day, I pointed out that in the regular season that Oklahoma against Alabama had a 5% post-game win expectancy based on the stats of that game. 95% of the time with those numbers, Alabama would have won the regular season game. But I also wanted to point out that Oklahoma made every big play in that game. They made every clutch play. Their pressure probably caused Alabama to miss opportunities. I wasn't doing it to take away credit. I was doing it to give credit. So Saturday morning, our great researcher, Marissa Dowling, I said, Marissa, I said, this has to be like a mirror image of the regular season game. I said, can we get with Connolly and find out what the post-game win expectancy was for Alabama? I said, I'll bet it was 15 to 20%, something like that. Shows I don't know anything about how that math is calculated. The post-game win expectancy based on the stats for Alabama was like 84%. But that, to your point, Pete, it didn't feel that way. It didn't feel that way at all, Dan, that Alabama, after that bad start, based on that number, controlled things. I never felt that way. I do give them a ton of credit for getting up off the deck and making plays, and Simpson made big plays, and Lazier Brooks was, I'm not trying to cast stones at Ryan Williams, but Brooks has sort of turned into what they thought Williams was going to be this year, maybe again at some point, but Williams is struggling and Brooks has stepped up, and that defense was outstanding. Kane Womack went in, I was told, with multiple game plans. I don't give credit where credit's due. Cole Kubalik, I was talking to him on the sideline, and he said that of the A&M game, and he said that Womack had gone in with multiple game plans, a few more than he normally does, to see how the game went. He was able to pull pieces from all of them and found ways to thwart Oklahoma in the biggest moments and win the game.
Yeah, I wonder what they do calculate. Alabama won turnovers, right? One turnover. And usually when you win turnover battle, it's kind of Bill Parcells, I think, was old school analytics on that one. I think that was his big thing. But it was the pick six and just changed it. OU, I think you're an Oklahoma fan, you feel like we had our chances, and it just we had the pick six, we had the punt that didn't punt, we missed 2 field goals, or at least 2, maybe more. No, 2. It was the final 2. Every time we had a chance, it just didn't go. We had the big lead. We could have put them away. Pete said the drop by the tight end, all of that. But I do give a lot, that was Alabama withstood that. They got a lot better offensive line play in that second half that was critical because Simpson had no time early. They did not have a running attack, but then like Daniel Hill had a touchdown, a big 30-yard run. Really, the defense stepped up and made Mateer uncomfortable and didn't let him kind of get in that groove. So it was all there for Alabama. Very close game, very, very interesting game to watch because I agree. Alabama ends up winning by 10. This with 2 missed field goals. It could have been closer, obviously. And you would think that at no point in that game were you totally convinced Alabama was going to win it. And I would say by that, how they do that win percentage chart in real time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I bet that thing tracked with like Kalen DeBoer to Michigan. We'll talk about that later if we were talking about Michigan job. Right? Oh, he's going. No, wait a minute. And I had to feel like
he's back.
He's back. And I had to feel like there was also sub ones with like Michigan fan going, wait, this is our guy? We're losing 17-0. And Alabama fan being like, get on the first bus. Don't even let him back into Tuscaloosa to pick up his stuff. Box it and ship it. And then all of a sudden that whole, well, no, we do want him now. This guy looks like he knows what he's doing. And Alabama fan, that's our guy all along. Totally chaotic. I've never quite seen a game where there was this coaching search kind of love-hate among the fans hang over the balance of it also. It's just great only in college football dynamic we had going there.
Okay, I'm looking at this thing. They have it on the app. At one point in the second quarter here, the win expectancy or win probability for Alabama was 10.9%. And then you see a really sharp jump, which is going to be right around the pick six. And let's see.
Right before half, I'm seeing that.
Yeah. I'm scrolling
it goes
to
from 25 to 50.1.
Yeah, 50.1, and that's the that was the pick six. It goes to like 50.1, and then in the second half, it got up. In the third quarter, it was like 85% for Alabama, which, I don't know. It was a strange game, but an entertaining one, I thought.
Yeah. Oklahoma had 100 more yards and lost. Alabama had almost 200 more yards in the first game and lost.
Yeah.
Indicating the point you were making earlier about the Connolly the Connolly post snap. Let's wrap up that game conversation with Ryan Williams. I don't think we've talked about Ryan Williams much on this podcast. He is obviously a tremendously talented player, and he has just kind of simply not produced in the second half of the season, the second half of last season, recent weeks. What do you think his future is? Do you think he needs a change of scenery? Do you think he could be a reliable? You're going out there against Indiana. He's one of the more talented players on your roster. Like, where do we think Ryan Williams is right now?
I think he, first of all, I don't know the answer to the one. I know that they're going to try not to have him have a change of scenery, because I think there's a feeling that, change some fundamental things, do some different kind of work, that he can realize his vast potential, sort of regain what he had last year. Here's what he looks like to me. He looks a little bit like Chuck Knobloch. Remember when Chuck Knobloch, who was a great player, couldn't throw the ball first base? He'd get a ground ball, he'd field it, and he's just like, ugh. Like, even when they threw him that swing pass late, to try to keep the clock moving, Oklahoma was using the timeouts, he bobbled that. So to me, this is a confidence and a pressing and a little bit in the head deal. It's not a physical problem. It's not a lack of effort. It's one of those things where you've had some drops. Now you're thinking about drops, and the harder you try, the worse it gets. Sometimes that's particularly true in baseball, and I think in this case that may be true. The harder you try, the worse it gets. And if he can still be a threat in the Rose Bowl game against Indiana, in my judgment, because he's so talented. But he's one of those things it's like when you're in a hitting slump, another baseball analogy. If you can just see one go through. If you're in a shooting slump in basketball, if you can just make a couple of layups, just see it go through the net a couple of times. I think that's what he needs. He needs to see it go through the net a couple of times, see a couple of hits to the outfield, make a couple of catches. If he can do that, I think he'll be fine. But I do think it's pretty obvious watching him. And I haven't, we had Ryan on the podcast in the offseason, terrific guy to talk to. It looks like a loss of confidence right now to me, and one of those issues where he's pressing. That's what it looks like anyway.
I'm looking at these game log. I mean, it's stark. I mean, he's going along perfect right through the South Carolina game, late October, 7 catches, 72 yards, right? Everything's going fine. He has a touchdown against LSU, but he only had 3 catches against OU, 1 against EIU. I can't remember who they played there. 2 against Georgia and 1 against Oklahoma. Just fell off the cliff. And I remember they had him run one. They had a running play for him in the SEC title game against Georgia, and maybe they need to do more of that. I'm not going to tell Kalen DeBoer to run his offense.
It's a great idea.
But sometimes it's that. But but he's going to be an X factor, because here's the thing. Yeah, maybe he's in a slump. Maybe I have absolutely no idea. But he sure can have a 7-catch game. So if you're Indiana, that's one of the X factors. Here's a guy that's underperforming. And if you're an Alabama fan, boy, we get this guy going too. This offense goes back to what we're hoping all season long it could be. So very interesting player for January 1st.
Third highest drop percentage in the FBS.
I think he leads the nation in drops.
In total drops, and then percentage. The guy gets thrown a lot of balls. So it's a that's a fascinating storyline for me. We'll do a preview pod next week, but that's a fascinating storyline for me moving forward.
What about the A&M Miami game? We've praised the defenses. There were certainly moments that were sloppy. I thought it was a really fun game, an intense game. The one thing that I did wonder was, and maybe there obviously were some reasons for it, I felt like both teams needed to trust their quarterbacks a little bit more. It was like everything, Joey Galloway was like, everything's to the outside. And then we were standing on the sideline watching it, threw one down the middle. You know how Joey is. That's why they won't let him throw down the middle, Rece, because somebody I think it was Carson, threw one into traffic and balls batted around, fell to the turf. But it was like after a couple of field goals were missed, and, one field goal blocked and a field goal missed, that both sides said, okay, wait a minute. We're not going to be the one to screw this up. We're not going to be the one to screw this up. And you got a little conservative here and there. And then when they did take the shots, sometimes plays just missed going. But I thought those were two really good teams. Two teams that, have some challenges on offense, but the defense has made them pay. I thought it was a really, really good game and a great, great win for Miami on the road, and a good play at the end. Maybe not the most accurate ball in the world from Marcel on that last throw into the end zone, which I also had some questions about. I'm going to need to see with that much time, at least a run, at least the threat of getting to the edge and finding some way to let Seven touch the ball again, KC Concepcion. I need him to touch it on jet sweep, pop pass, or I don't like to call them pop passes to the tight end of the line of scrimmage, touch pass, like off the jet sweep pass. I needed him to touch it one more time down there, and we didn't get that.
First and goal from the 5, 33 seconds left, no timeouts. And I understand passing the ball, but passing it all 3 times with a quarterback who's had a shaky day and isn't the most accurate, and not one time did they roll him out and give him an option to
need
run.
to get him
That was
out
my
there.
thing.
Yeah. I would have run Marcel, maybe second down you do it, but I would have run Marcel Reed at least one time. Like that, to me, I understand wanting to get the ball to Concepcion, but you need that threat there at some point. And, you go to the long side of the field and you give him some room to go and let him make a play, and it put that defense in a blender. So I think when you look back, that was what stood out to me. It was like, we're really doing this 3 different times against that defense in a compressed area.
You're doing what he does not as well as he does other things at this point in his career.
Yes,
he's going to continue to get better at it. You were asking him to do the thing where he has the most area for growth, as opposed to doing the things that he's the best at right now.
Yes.
Fair?
That is a really good way to put it. He is a excellent quarterback with a high trajectory who, Corey Heatherman, the defensive coordinator at Miami, who obviously had an elite day, said, we wanted him to sit in the pocket and play quarterback. That was their game plan. And A&M settled for Miami's preference on the goal line.
Yeah, especially when you got Bain and Mesidor and these guys coming at you. You want him in the pocket, and you just took away one of his talents, which is he's just such an incredible runner, and especially so elusive for 5 yards. So that wasn't great. I want to shift to Miami. I wonder, Rece, you guys were down there, how much the wind played, and you can tell me later, but it felt like that was part of it. They weren't letting the quarterbacks go. I love this game. I love defensive football, and both of these teams just had a terrific defensive game. I was fine with it. It was interesting. The kicking became very very dicey. I mean, I think I can't remember what the length was on when A&M finally hit one, but the place just erupted. Everyone was holding their breath on this, 28-yard field goal or whatever the heck the thing was. It goes through, and it was like, oh my God. Instead of just, already leaving to go get some nachos or whatever the people do, knowing it's in. Miami, this was, some biggest win since, 20 years, 25 years since they won the national title. That I don't know, but it might be. It was a really, really significant victory for the Miami program. They gutted it out. Mario Cristobal, I have said, has built his program through the lines, and you saw that on Saturday. And I think the Miami's a program that's always going to have some elite game-breaking players, and they sure do with Malachi Toney. But they won this game by being tougher on the defensive front. They were really the better team, and they needed to win this game. Got down close, but Toney got tripped up on a punt. There was the field goals. There was just different plays that Miami really should have led this game 20 zip or something like that at one point, but they didn't. And they get down the end. But I thought this was a really important victory for the Miami Hurricanes going forward as a program, for the ACC, for Mario Cristobal, and all the excitement that got built into it. And this is what the kind of program he's trying to build. And I think that was just a big historic moment. Would have been a big historic moment if that had flipped the other way for A&M. I think it's part of the subset that made that thing so interesting.
Well, both of these programs sort of carried that albatross. Miami, just for the last 20 years, the 20 years prior to that, Miami seemingly won most big games, but they really hadn't won a game like this I think you're right, Dan. I mean, starting with that national championship game loss to Ohio State, they haven't won a game of this magnitude. They had good wins. I'm not suggesting that, but they haven't won a game of this magnitude probably since, or anything close to it. Even, some big regular season game that put them in position, to do so. It was, but now A&M sort of carries on the so-called battered Aggie syndrome. But I don't think it's the same for them. Now they're going to have some guys to replace, but this was not a one-off for A&M. They'll be back on this stage. But it did underscore one thing I think that's pretty important as we start looking at evaluation, how teams get in the playoff, how you rank them, how they judge them. A&M was perfect at home, and they had the great win at Notre Dame early in the year. They were perfect at home prior to the Miami game. Did not beat a team that finished with a winning record, not one, at home.
Wild.
Yeah, and so it shows the disparity in the conference schedules. And so what does that mean in terms of evaluation? I'm not sitting here saying, look, A&M didn't deserve a home game. They did. But in terms of ranking the teams and looking at it, there's so much more to look at than whether a team is, 9-3 or 11-1. And especially when the conference schedules are so different. And there's no, this is not Indiana's non-conference where you're decided this is what you're going to do and you're not stepping out to play anybody of consequence. This is like random. This is how they've decided to give you the schedule, and a couple of teams are disappointing, and all of a sudden you're not playing any good teams. But that has to be taken into the evaluation. I wonder, if that played a part, because you get down to the last two games of the season, and as good as A&M was and is, they didn't perform to that same level against Texas and Miami, particularly on offense. So, I think that's part of it too. But I want to point out, again, performance does not validate or invalidate your selection and where you're ranked. The selection processes are different. That once you're selected, how the game goes, whatever. It doesn't. You know what? Alabama winning in Oklahoma does not prove that they should have been in. It proves they won the game. If you still think Notre Dame should have been in, that's a perfectly valid point. And the fact that A&M didn't score doesn't mean they didn't deserve a home game. It means they didn't play well enough to do it. Selection and performance are different. Okay, I'm off the soapbox. Go ahead.
Wait, is it March or is it December, Rece? Because I feel like I've heard that before.
It's the
same thing. No, he's right.
And, I said this to one of the CFP guys this week. I said, a good thing to think about. I'm going to give credit where credit's due. I hate to give credit to Larry, the lawyer, Jay Billis, but I will. Billis says this at the around the bubble every year. And it's less true in football than basketball because it's smaller sample size. But I do think that when you're evaluating those last few teams to get in the field, every team in that group has proven they can lose. All of them. The ones at the end of the line, Miami, Notre Dame, Alabama, BYU, all those teams, they proved they could lose. So who'd you beat? Who do you play and who do you beat? Who are you capable of beating? And I think that might be a good way to look at it. Instead, we get hyper-focused on they lost. Well, yes, if they wouldn't be in this position if they didn't lose. Indiana and Ohio State weren't in the position because they didn't lose, until they played each other. But these other teams, they've proven they can step on a rake. They've proven that, okay? When they're at their best, who'd they beat? Or how many times did you step on a rake? That can count. But getting hyper-focused on one game or one loss is not the proper way to evaluate the teams at the end of the line, to me. Anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, the discourse gets exhausting on all of this stuff. But, one thing, you pointed out that the schedule disparity in a conference, and this is why the whole idea, and it's a great political rallying cry line if you want to make changes that benefit you. We need to take subjectivity out of this. We need to get the committee out of this. Nobody likes the committee, right? They poll like Congress or whatever, right? 12%. Nobody likes subjectivity. You have to have it's never going away. Just because you finish this place in this conference, who'd you play? It's not the old days, the old Big 12, and they do the whole round robin. Yeah, then you'd know. Then you'd know. You don't know. So you have to have a group that's sitting there saying, hey, and if we're going to do more home field, more subjectivity. The subjectivity is never going to go away because you have a 12-game season and 136 teams. And that's the chaos. So you have to have a committee to decide this thing out. My favorite was, we want less subjectivity in this, but I'm a Notre Dame fan, and both these teams stink. Well, they both beat you. So we would need subjectivity to have someone say, you know what, and I'm not even disputing this, I think Notre Dame at the end of the season was better than both these teams. So you would need a high degree of subjectivity to say that, because you lost to both teams. You can't really complain about a playoff game where you lost to both teams head-to-head in a 12-game season and say, we need less subjectivity in this process. You need a lot of subjectivity to get you in. So, and I agree, like how they performed. I thought it was a good game. A&M, they got propped up by that schedule. I don't think there's any question they weren't the same team that last late, but they did hang with them. They had a chance to beat Miami. They didn't. I thought it was a great game.
Me too.
Speaking of great games, the next two.
That was all fantastic scenes.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was awesome. Like, I mean, worth every bit of that $3,700
backdoor cover by James
right?
Madison. James Madison's backdoor cover. That was impressive.
I flipped to Texas Tech Duke hoops. I'm not going to lie. I was
watching Bears Packers. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I left this.
That was a great game.
I texted Pete, and Pete said he was about to text Dan, you and me, this exact same thing. I texted him, Brawl of the Wild greater than CFP game right now, because Montana State pulled away at the end with some terrific big plays. But at the time, man, they were going at it when Ole Miss was kind of having its way with Tulane. So, what did you make of Ole Miss's performance? That is a storyline. You knew there would be a lot of emotion. They've proven in the regular season they were outclassed. That Tulane was outclassed by Ole Miss, and it proved to be true again. I guess 2 points closer, or whatever it was, than a regular season. But what'd you make of the Rebels long term? Feel like they're on good footing to go forward in this playoff and play Georgia as well as they did in Athens in the regular season?
Absolutely, Rece. What a statement, right? Like, now that game was early in September. I think it was Chambliss' second start, maybe. So, but like Tulane got a lot better as the season went on. Retzlaff got comfortable. They grew up as a team. They're one of those, like most AAC 55 new players. You know what I mean? Just like they really came together and bonded. And the best version of Tulane was exactly the same as the September version of Tulane against the Ole Miss team that's gone through all the drama, all the controversy, all of the defection of Lane Kiffin. And for Pete Golding to show that there's no negligible difference with or without Lane Kiffin, I think was a significant statement for that program, both today, for this playoff, and long term. I don't think you can overstate how important it was for the future of the Ole Miss program to have a win, not only at home, but the tenor of the win, I think, was the most important part.
I thought it was interesting. They made a lot of points after, it's not Lane calling the plays, Charlie Weiss Jr., and we're going to have Charlie Weiss Jr. at least for this playoff. That was a good pitch for LSU because he's going there. But that I think that was important. I think you're looking at a team. I mean, you remember they scored touchdowns on 5 consecutive possessions against Georgia. And I believe that was, I assume it's never been done against a Kirby Smart defense. They're leading 35-26 going into the fourth quarter against Georgia. Georgia needed 2 touchdowns and a field goal late to win that game in Athens. So can this team beat Georgia on a neutral site? Absolutely. That looked like the Ole Miss Rebels. Lane Kiffin wasn't there. There's no visor throws. There was none of that. But they played like they do. So I think it was a good statement for them. A game they should have won. They played exactly how you would want them to play. Tulane, not a terrible team. They obviously can't hang with that level of Ole Miss. But I thought it was a great day. I'm sure it was not there, but I'm sure it was I saw a lot of signs from the Grove and kind of however you say it, whatever, healing day for Ole Miss fans and a great scene and a great moment for college football in Mississippi.
Catharsis, Dan. That's what
it.
That's
I
what it
can't-
was. Yeah.
yeah,
Cathartic or catharsis. Yeah.
Yeah, I try to just avoid most of the hard words. One syllable. One syllable is good for me.
James Madison, did they belong? Did they not? Oregon after the game saying it almost felt like a loss because they let down in the second half. We'll spend some more time on the thing. My whole deal is just meet a threshold. The rules were the rules. James Madison got in, no issue at all with JMU getting in. Good team, fun team to watch. Fought their tails off. Just were overmatched, got in a big hole, and couldn't catch them in the end. So that game, the drama was sucked out of it almost immediately with the difference in overall speed. Not that JMU doesn't have fast guys, they do, but there were more of them on the outside for Oregon. They were able to make big plays. Moore was good early, and that was all they needed. It was like a warm up game for them. Basically, knocked the rust off. I'm sure the defense wants to play a little bit better. I noticed that Tosh Lupoy said after the game that it was made clear that wasn't the standard they wanted on defense. But I tell you, with both coordinators leaving and divided, and then you get a little bit of a, shaky half on one side of the ball. I think it's an issue. I mean, for these teams that have coordinators moving forward. I mean, Saban told the story on game day about, the year that Kirby was going to Georgia and they were playing the national championship game. Kirby was taking a bunch of the guys with him to Georgia. So they were in the game planning meetings and they kicked him out for the staff meetings. All of that plays a part, man. And, and I don't know, I'm not suggesting it played a part with Oregon's second half defensive performance. But, it's something that has to be managed as they move forward in the playoff with these guys, wearing two hats and moving on,
I thought Bob Chesney and the whole offensive side had a great game plan. They called a great game, did every single thing that they possibly could, particularly defensively. Just there's no way they were stopping them.
Yeah,
I thought they called a really creative. It was a fun game to watch that offense try to score, and they did score. But at the end of the day, this was like Anthony Joshua versus Jake Paul. Well, we knew what was going to happen at the end, and that's unfortunate. You don't really want that. Did they deserve to be in? They got in because the ACC's tiebreaker malfunctioned, and that happened. Should the committee have taken Duke with 5 losses? Probably would have been more competitive of a game, but who really cares? I think that problem, the glitch here, will be fixed. You're not going to see 2 group of 5 teams. This playoff would have been better if it was Notre Dame, Ole Miss, or whatever, and then you have 1 group of 5 team play, Tulane's up at Oregon or whatever. But these things are going to happen. I still think you got to let this playoff cook a little bit before we react to every little thing that goes down, or else you're just chasing your tail trying to fix things. And this won't happen again, and it shouldn't. Good job by JMU. It was a lot of fun, but I wouldn't read too much into Oregon. I think they probably just let up off the pedal late if they're playing a team they just knew they could score 80 points on if they wanted.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what was it? I think it was 34-6 or something like this. Human nature, you probably got some guys in the game, all of those things, and Jake Paul, who was the guy he fought, Dan?
Anthony Joshua.
Anthony Joshua. When you go to a fight like that, you got to be very careful about where you eat breakfast the next morning, because it can leave you ill and give you difficulty in reaching the locales where you are scheduled to be. But I digress. Speaking of locales where people might need to be.
Is that a false narrative, Rece? Are you perpetuating a false narrative?
I'm just saying, I just wondered, is that what the kids are calling it these days? Bad breakfast? Anyway, I won't cast aspersions anywhere.
That is just
for those
wonderful.
Who follow closely, you'll be able to read between the lines there. You have to follow a little closely. What a great day it was in College Station. What is it? What's it going to...
Alex Caruso did a great job.
Alex Caruso was
Aggie.
amazing. Great Aggie. Great Aggie. Great to have Alex. Met Alex's mother after that. Alex brought his mother down to the sideline. She was very, very kind, nice lady. Excited to have Alex part of the show, as we were too.
Yes. You know what? I did not. I mentioned that fight. That was not a setup. I swear. I just thought of the fight.
You were tweeting about the fight the other night.
I watched all the fights.
So
Jake Paul sucks me into these things. It was completely. I did not mean to set that up.
Yeah. How was your breakfast after the fight, Dan?
I was fine.
What'd you have for breakfast after the fight? Good?
Yeah, I was fine. Had yeah. I didn't mean that, but I'm glad I did.
Did you make it to all your appointments?
Have you ever?
I was fine in the morning.
Have you ever had to stop on the side of the road and be ill after a bad breakfast?
I mean, it was really, if you did go to that fight, I think you would question why you paid, because it really wasn't a fight. Although one guy ended up with a broken jaw, but we'll not get into that. I'll save that for some MMA podcast or something like that, or whatever is going on. But yes, I didn't mean it, but boy, I'm glad I did bring that up.
And you know, sometimes, and I'm going to leave it at this. I'm going to get us to Michigan, but I'll leave it at this. Sometimes what seems unlikely or improbable is actually true. There was a New Year's Eve, and I won't go into the graphic details.
Oh boy.
There was a New Year's Eve, and Pete knows this. I don't drink much now, but you guys can believe this or not, this is the honest truth. I didn't drink at all in college at all. I didn't. And there was a New Year's Eve.
I believe you, Rece.
Yeah, we were out.
How about you,
New Year's
Pete?
Eve.
How about you?
Yeah. So there was a New Year's Eve, and I was out in the parking lot of a restaurant, absolutely being violently ill, and of course everyone walking by thinking that, but it was like just legitimate whatever it was.
See?
So sometimes
who knows?
What seems improbable might well be generally
Let's
know.
be generally
Reece, correct,
correct, not specifically wrong,
yeah.
Reece. Let's be generally correct.
Right. Generally correct, perhaps specifically wrong. We didn't mention any names. We're just saying, be careful where you eat breakfast after fights.
Especially at a farcical boxing match, concession stands or something.
I'd be very careful. Michigan is being very diligent, very careful. Both you guys have followed this story closely. Where do we stand with the Michigan head coaching search? Is it still where it was? I mean, I know Kenny Dillingham, Pete, you broke the story, signed the extension. The whole narrative was if Kalen DeBoer loses, he's going. He didn't. So anything different, or is Michigan going to stay the course and see if they can still lure DeBoer?
Well, you can still upload your resume on ZipRecruiter and see if they'll call you back, I guess. Yeah, nothing imminent. Obviously, Kenny Dillingham was involved. He said they never offered him the job, and I think ASU came in and made him. He's got a extension. He's on there trying to find. I love Kenny. He's on there. He takes the press conference to say he's back to beg somebody in Greater Phoenix. Someone in Scottsdale wants to throw $20 million at him every year to fund the program. Is there a rich guy out there? I love it. I think this is a reality
love
show.
Letter to a wealthy alum.
Yeah, I was like, do you want to date a millionaire? Wasn't there some show like that? I think, is Jesse Palmer involved in that? I don't know. Kenny's search. This is going to be the next reality show. A college football coach searched for a very wealthy. They had that in that Chad Powers. Is it Chad Powers? Whatever that thing was.
Chad Powers. Yeah,
it's a good show. Good show. You were in it, Reece, weren't you?
That was
were you
not.
in that?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Your many credits. Anyway, it's they're taking their time. Kyle Whittingham was involved a little bit. There's still Jed Fish. There, do we wait until after these games? Some bowl games are going to end. Will some people be involved after that? Eli Drinkwitz. Could this extend past January 1st, which would bring any team that potentially loses, the coach of any team that potentially loses on January 1st, which again would bring us back to the flow chart or the probability chart that we had going on in Norman, perhaps. I don't know. It's open, and I don't think it's real predictable where they end up at this moment. Pete, do you know?
Well, yeah, I would say that it would be a surprising turn of events as we sit here on Monday morning if Michigan has a coach before Christmas. That would be just the way this is going. So at that point, do you wait for January 1st to see the result of the Alabama game? I think that conversation is at least in play. It's not as hot and heavy as it was last time, but I do think that's one of the roads in this choose your own coaching search adventure that they could take. Kyle Whittingham, Jed Fish, Eli Drinkwitz, like all come with the timing of this is going to be really fascinating. I think that's probably the best way to look at it. You know, all these coaches are established, accomplished coaches. Now Whittingham's different. Obviously, he's stepping down. He's on his way out. He claimed he's in the portal, which I thought was really interesting and probably gives a window into how that really ended at Utah. But Fish has played a bowl game, but all these guys, Clark Lee, there had been some interest there. All these guys are like signing their players right now. So every day you wait, there's more pressure on them to sign their own players there. There's pressures on coaches who could be going other places. There's a million. Being a head coach, I've always said, is 1,000 small decisions, right? And as you move up to the January 2nd portal, there are thousands of small decisions to make. Keep your players, start looking at others, decision-making, especially your 10 key guys who are going to be $500,000 plus guys. What do you do? How do you do it with them? And if you did eye another job, can you slow all that down? Well, they might want to go somewhere else too. What are you going to do? Every day puts more pressure on incumbent sitting guys and how they're going to operate for that. So I just think it's a fascinating game of chicken right now. Where Michigan is, it's clear where they want it to go. That becomes exponentially more complicated now. Wouldn't say impossible, but boy, it would become complicated because here's the thing. Alabama can beat Indiana. Indiana's really good. Touchdown favorite, should be 6.5-point favorite. They should be, right? They're excellent. But I don't know if there's any matchup left in this where you're like, oh, there's no. So you are risking a result there because at that point, then all of a sudden the portal opens. My understanding is Michigan doesn't have a ton of guys signed for multiple year deals. Underwood is one of them. But other than that, the core of your roster that's made up, they're going to go to January 2nd. They obviously play a game. They're going to go January 2nd and be like, wait a minute, what are we doing? Where are we going? Every day that goes by, I do not think there's a great chance Biff Poggi will be the head coach. But I think every day that goes by without someone else coming in, that goes up by a tiny increase. Now, Michigan has kind of said they want to push forward and go to a new era, and Biff would be more of the same. But it's not a non-zero chance of that happening. Is what I would glean into it. What I would glean into it at this point. So, it's one of the most fascinating coaching searches I've ever covered in all the years I've done this. With what's going on at Michigan right now, the stakes are high. The prize is high. Right, it's an excellent job. You have interim president. You have AD on the shakiest ground you can possibly be on. Basically, the candidates are taking this job, thinking there'll be a new athletic director come the start of their first season. When foot hits ball and in week one. So yeah, there's a million variables and dynamics. They're literally sitting at Texas A&M. The fans are coming up, hey, who's going to be the next coach at Michigan? And it's a hard question to answer because you don't really know who's making the hire, right? Ward Manuel's running the search. He's on the Zooms with an associate AD with the candidates. He's there, but are they really going to give a guy whose career future's in the crosshairs a ton of autonomy, in doing this? So, a ton of competing dynamics here that really are making this fascinating theater.
I will stand by this. I said on a podcast earlier, I do not think Kalen DeBoer will take the job ultimately because I don't think he wants to be perceived as running from what he ran to. Michigan's a great job. If he does, he does, and good for him if that's what he decides. I don't think he will end up doing that. Maybe he will. But from Michigan's standpoint, if that's the guy you want, wait. If it takes waiting until they finish, if they were to upset Indiana, wait. If that's the guy you want. Why settle? One portal class, one recruiting class is not worth settling for a program like Michigan. Now, I understand the concept that there's no guarantee you're going to get him. I get that. But if you are convicted that this is your guy, wait it out. See what happens. Push forward. Let him know we're here when your season's over. If he signs an extension, revised deal, whatever makes, he's been pretty strong in his comments. But I think if you navigate your way through the vernacular. There's probably some wiggle room there, and there's probably some room, financially for buyouts and all of that kind of stuff. But if he resigns, does something that is more definitive or absolutely definitive that it is not happening, then you change courses. But if that's your guy, go get your guy. I believe in that. I mean, and I understand Michigan as the bastion of academia that it is. Some of the portal additions might be a little different there anyway. But it's I don't think I've never understood this concept of hiring a coach because we got to get a class in here. It's 1 year. I mean, I'm not saying Michigan should ever sacrifice a year. It's Michigan. But which would you rather do? Maybe not have the type of portal class that you'd hoped and then have to do this again in 2 years because you didn't hire the right guy? Or would you rather stick it out, try to get the right guy, and if you have to adjust, then you go to plan B after that? That would be how I would pursue it. But it's very easy for me to sit here and say that's how I would pursue it because I'm not going to get fired if you wind up having to hire Connor Stallions because there's nobody else left or something like that.
Oh,
By the way, this could be part of Connor Stallions' grand plan. This could be part of the grand plan, Dan. Have Connor Stallions the manifesto. This could be it.
He saw it coming. Yeah, he had this scouted out. For content purposes, can we please have that happen? Can my man Connor?
He did endorse Biff Poggi on Twitter the other day, which probably hurts Biff Poggi's case.
Biff's like, "What are you doing? Gee, thanks."
Yeah, 6-16 at Charlotte, I think, and he said, "You know nothing about football if you think you should judge Biff Poggi on his tenure at Charlotte." I do remember a game where they had so many unsportsmanlike conduct penalties. It was on a Thursday night that he had to suspend a bunch of guys. That's my one memory of Biff Poggi at Charlotte.
I think the issue
were there unsportsmanlike conduct penalties for that cut-off sleeveless T-shirt that he wore on the sideline?
No, that's just
should have been
visually offensive.
Okay,
Biff. He would be a good character too to the mix.
Oh yeah,
he'd be awesome
to the mix.
Yeah,
he'd be on game day every week.
The problem for a guy like Biff, and this is really likely entirely unfair, is that what Sharon Moore did to everybody there, and this is what happens when you behave the way Sharon Moore did, is if you're at the university, you have to sit there and say, okay, what did Biff know? Did this guy know? Did that guy know? How many more people are going to come forward? What more is there Sharon was acting so erratically and so there's so much going on. You don't know what if the next shoe drops in a week after we just hire this guy? So it's a completely unfair thing that happens to everybody on that staff. That when a coach or any boss acts in that manner, that they kind of get stuck being like, that damages their candidacy, because there's certainly a completely reasonable scenario if, let's say, this had gone a different way, and maybe they still do this. You say, look, Biff, Biff Poggi's going to be the interim coach for a year. We're going to re-sign our guys. Everyone likes him. I mean, right? He seems. I do trust Connor Stallions on football decisions. This guy could do it fine. Kind of like how they did with Stanford. You go a year, and then we're going to get the number one guy next year. We're going to get whoever we want next year. And that's a perfectly reasonable scenario, but he has to overcome the stain of Sharon Moore, which may have absolutely nothing to do with him. I'm guessing Sharon wasn't talking to Biff a lot about what was happening, but if you're a school, how do you know? How do you know? And you keep a guy and then the shoe drops and it's even worse on the lawsuits and who knows where it's going. So that's the mess that is very on the back burner for a Michigan that Sharon Moore created.
I'm going to hazard to guess that you're not only generally accurate, but specifically correct, because if the anecdotes of Biff being one of the few guys unafraid to challenge Jim Harbaugh and tell him when he was
I have no idea.
Making errors. I'm sure Sharon was not sharing the intimate details of,
on that. I mean, I'm just guessing. They didn't seem like they would have a lot in common.
You're in good. I think you're in good stead, both generally and specifically. There would be my guess, anyway.
Yeah, I think so. I bet my guess is Biff knew nothing. But these places have to act like institutions, right? And they have to think.
For sure.
And again, what's Michigan's problem? Well, there's no there's not enough oversight, or you guys aren't taking this seriously enough, or you're sticking with people, right? Those are the criticisms of Michigan. That's what they're investigating. And then you sit there and say, oh, just keep this guy. He probably didn't know anything. Yeah. That can look really bad in hindsight. And universities have many lawyers and many crisis communicators and many firms that maybe fans don't think about, that have to look ahead and say, well, we're not walking into that briar patch, whether it's fair or not, or whether it's the right decision for the football or not. Because I would be, if they sat there and said, look, we got this ended poorly for us, wrong timing. Let's go with Biff. Well, that could work out spectacularly, or unfairly or not, or fairly or not. It could be wrong. So it's a like Pete said, it's a really, really interesting job search, because there's so many other factors at play.
Yeah, I was just going to make a quick point. Like, there is that Jenner and Block investigation that's going on right now. So to not let that play out and then make a decision that, I'm not saying anybody could be, but the people in that building and who've been in that building the last 5 years during this sort of spate of scandals are going to be in the crosshairs. So it's really fascinating, administrative decisions that Michigan's facing right now.
Pete, Teddy, and Tegan, I'm sure, are very excited about the impending arrival, not of the new Michigan coach, but of Santa Claus. If Santa has a little extra room in his sack to leave you a present, what is it that you want this year? What would you like to find under the tree? This can be literal. This can be figurative. This can be whatever you want. You get to sit on Santa's lap and say, this is what I want for Christmas. Although I think you shouldn't.
There's a visual I didn't need. I'd rather talk about what people ate after the Jake Paul fight.
Well, the result would be the same. The result would be side of
Pete
the road
on Santa's lap.
Yeah,
there's a Christmas visual.
Your car on the side of the road, taking ill.
I'm a man of not many wants, Rece. I'd like a quiet-ish 24th, 25th, maybe 26th with the family luck. without having to call the town of Pittsfield, Michigan during those 3 days.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah.
Dan, what do you got? What do you want?
Whiskey has always been accepted under my tree. Jameson. John Jameson he's always a reliable Christmas guest. Doesn't talk too much. Consistent. He's there.
You guys, I would want for you guys to have exactly what you want on Christmas. No calls to Pittsfield. Nice bottle of Jameson, and have a great day with your families, just as I wish that for all of you out there. Thanks for listening to the College Game Day podcast. Download wherever you prefer to get your podcast, or subscribe and never miss a single episode. We wish you Merry Christmas and the happiest of holidays.